Hey guys, check this out. We just made a Stone Coat countertop look like concrete. In this video, we're going to show you how to pour this, how to color it. We're also going to show you how to hone it and take the shine down to make it look like polished concrete. This is a really fun process. It's super easy to do. Stay tuned and enjoy the video. We're going to give you all the tips and tricks right here at stonecoatcountertops.com. Enjoy the video. All right, here's our first piece that we're going to actually put our paint and primer and one on. Before I do that, we just want to look at our piece. We have a couple of seams and those feel really good. And here on the back edge where it's the raw MDF, I'm actually going to take my sanding pad here and I'm just going to bevel that just a touch. And the reason that we do that is because when the epoxy flows, you don't want a sharp edge right here. You want just a tiny round over, and the reason that is because it will create surface tension right here on the back, and you'll have little voids. A lot of times a backsplash will cover those voids, but to avoid that, simply just give yourself a little bit of a bevel wherever it's a raw edge, and you'll get a much better pour. Also, I'm just going to quickly sand this top just to kind of make sure there's nothing sticking up or nothing rough, and we'll wipe it down, and we'll be ready for our paint and primer in one. Here we go. I really like these sanding backers. I got this off of Amazon. I'll put a link on our site so you guys can find them. But I just use 150 grit sanding paper. You know, a lot of times you can use a random orbital, but if it's a fast job or if you're just doing something by hand, I love this little backer. It's come in real handy. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to start with the bare paint and primer in one. This is Suede Gray. This is one of the colors that we use a lot. And it's just really universal and it makes it look like concrete. It's really cool. So I'm just going to take a little bit of that on my roller, and what we're going to address first, you get most of the paint off of your roller, and then we're just going to address those edges because we're going to want 2 coats on those edges especially. So we'll start to roll those edges. I'll come around front to make sure I'm getting it, but all we're doing is just applying paint to the MDF. If you have a few roller marks here and there, they're not going to show through and transfer through the epoxy. But what you do have to be aware of is your seams. If your seams have pinholes and pin dots, that epoxy will find those voids and it'll just follow it, so you'll get these little pin dots that transfer through to your top coat. So make sure those are filled and your substrate is nice and smooth, and this will just go like clockwork. Here we go. We'll paint this up and show you what it looks like. All right, what we're going to do now that we have the substrate painted with that Suede Gray, that paint and primer in one, we're going to take our Rust-Oleum 2X black and we're just going to fog some color. When I say fog the color, you want to be far back from the piece. If you're super close, you're going to get bursts of paint that are obvious it was done with spray paint. You want to take that back and just fog some color and protect yourself while you do this. You're going to want to wear a mask, but you won't be able to hear me, so we'll just go ahead and do this and we'll have some fun. Here we go. All right, here we go. I'm going to test spray first, okay, and then I'm going to be back here. I'm just going to start fogging color. You could always add more. You can't take off what you did unless you repaint. So let's just be conservative about it, and we'll just start adding color. They did a very subtle rock face edge here, which I really like. They used a little Bondo, did a very subtle concrete rock face, and I really like this look. It looks like a smooth and perfect finish, almost like plaster. I really like it. It'll look very similar to concrete when they're done. So I'm just fogging these pieces. I start with the edges so I know what I'm going to match on the top. All right, let me go around back here. Now I got my edge done. You'll see in a lot of our videos we use this technique, and we like this because it gives your work pieces an underpainting. It makes it look very deep and realistic, because in our clear we're going to do the same thing, but you'll see through to that materials we're going to spray on top of the clear. You're going to see through it into this effect, and it makes it look deep and natural. All right, here we go. Let's do the top. And on concrete, you don't want veins, you don't want direction, you just want imperfect pattern there that we're doing. Let's hit some gray on here too, and it's just gonna give us even more variation in the concrete look. All right, the white, you gotta be really really conservative with the white. You can get it to be loud really quick with white. So we're just gonna stand back and just fog a little bit to give us that, see, oh, I just covered up all that gray where now it looks perfect. I hid those drips. We're good to go. I love it. You gotta be really careful when a customer's watching you too, because they see all your secrets. All right, cool. See how real that starts to look, just with some spray paint? Yeah, sorry about that.
This is awesome.
All right, let's do that little piece. Now I'll just go over with a little bit more black and cover some areas that I may have gotten too much white on, and we'll be ready to let this dry, and we'll put the clear epoxy over the top. All right, we're gonna go ahead and pour our clear coat over our substrate here. When you do fog color on like this, you gotta make sure you don't press really hard with the teeth of the trowel, because you'll see those come through. So we're gonna baby that, we're gonna pour this out, and we're gonna chop this, and then we'll add some color. Here we go. I've already poured a little bit out on I had some excess left over from another project we're working on at the same time, so that's what you're seeing there. But typically when I do a large kitchen, I can do 2 quarts at a time. I can move that, I can put the color in it as I like, and then I could move on to the next piece. So you don't have to do the whole thing at once. I'm gonna go ahead and grab a paint stick and scrape my excess out into the pool here. All right, so I'm gonna scrape the excess. I gotta make sure I scrape this into this mass pool of epoxy. If I scrape the excess out over here, it may not get mixed properly. You see, we've already mixed this epoxy, but we're gonna mix it again with the trowel, and we're gonna mix it again with the brush. That's why I want it right here in the mass of epoxy, so that we can mix those together, because if not, you wouldn't wanna scrape the bucket, because that's where you'll get sticky spots. Here we go. So now I could use every last drop and not be worried about sticky spots. If you haven't seen our video on how to mix Stone Coat Countertop epoxy, go check it out. It's very thorough, and call us anytime if you have questions. All right, so now that I mixed that, I scraped it out here, I'll just use my trowel, just go back and forth a little bit, and that's going to ensure that that all gets mixed in there well, and then when I chop it, it'll also make sure that it gets mixed in well. Okay, let's trowel this out. And it's really amazing how well this starts to look like concrete as you do each of these steps. Now you will see that there's quite a shine to this, which isn't natural in concrete unless it's applied with a topical sealer like epoxy. And if you don't like that high shine, we showed you earlier how you can mitigate that. We do have videos on sanding and polishing. If you can't find those on our YouTube channel, feel free to contact us anytime, and we'll point you in the right direction of where to find any video or any training material. And if you have questions, we always have free project support. We don't charge you to call us. Call anytime. So you see I'm not pressing really hard with that trowel. So I'm just bringing that epoxy out. I'm not pushing really hard, it's just spreading it at an even rate for me. I'm just letting the teeth kind of glide across that epoxy and not using the teeth, or else I'll mess up that underpainting. That's why we don't use a V-notch trowel as well. It's too sharp. So I'm just moving that mass of epoxy now across my piece. And you'll see, because we have it nice and warm and our epoxy's warm, it's almost like oil and water as you start to trowel it. It acts kind of funny. You can see this epoxy, it kind of glides on itself, but that's perfectly normal. Don't let that alarm you. All right, so we've got the epoxy spread on this large piece. We're going to go ahead and chop it to remove any of our trowel lines. Here we go. And I'm going all the way over the edges and all the way over the back, and I'm just going to chop this surface. Okay, we're going to torch these bubbles out. We've got a bunch of bubbles in the surface. We're going to torch those out, then we're going to fog on some color. Here we go. Okay, you ready? All right, I'm going to fog on some black. Now we have undertones already on there, but this is going to give us our depth. You don't need much. It's going to come out in little dots and things, and those will start to dissipate further out. If you don't like a specific dot, just touch it and it'll break it up. And just remember to be random about it. I'll come do some on those front edges. I'm just spraying just a little bit of paint in here, not a lot, just something to give it some visual interest. Let's try it. Yeah, that's cool. You don't see it a lot, but it's overlapping those colors. It's overlapping the white a little bit. So if you didn't like something, you could tone it down a little bit with the gray. It just gives it a little shade of something different too. With a little bit of gray. I'm going to take my hand now and I'm just going to rub this horizontally just to get that to really push in there. I use my hand a lot as a tool on the edges. It works really good. You can also use that brush, but I'll just rub that in. And we'll let that set up. Yeah, I like what that did actually. Let me rub that a little bit more. It's getting in some of those cracks and crevices of this broken edge, and it makes it look cool. You guys like that?
Looks really good.
All right, when you're doing the concrete look, you can go back now and really look at any speckles that you may not like from fogging that spray paint on. But the more that you touch it, the more you're going to want to touch it, and you're going to go, oh no, and don't be too picky on yourself, because you're going to hone that piece. You're not going to see a lot of those, and actually some of those speckles come through as efflorescence. It looks really natural. But if there's anything that you don't like, just touch it and it erases it. You want to bring that camera really close and I'll show how that works. So let's say, for instance, we don't like these dots right there. Tell me when you could see that one on camera. Can you see it? Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to touch that, and you see how it disappears? Cool, that's how you do it. So there's our piece. I'm going to torch this again, and we'll start the little piece. Okay guys, what we're going to do today, we're going to take this piece that we've made look like concrete, and to make it look more realistic, we're going to hone it down. You can do the same process to make something look like soapstone, or you can take any sheen down to a satin or matte finish or whatever finish you're looking for. And the way that we accomplish that is using our sanding assortment pack. And this is a real unique disc. It has a foam core which actually holds the water, so it keeps the pads lasting longer, and it also helps keep that surface wet so you get a better polish and a more even sand. We've tried all kinds of different sanding discs, and these ones work by far the best for us. And so you can get those right off our site if you're interested, but we're going to show you right now how to hone this piece. and it is really easy. Let me show you. Let's get started. What we're going to do on the edge first is we're going to start with our lowest grit. We're going to start with our low grit, and we're going to do the edges first by hand. The reason we do them by hand is because we don't want to go too aggressive and burn through these edges to where you see the original MDF or whatever substrate you use. So you got to be careful on those edges, and then we're going to start on the top. But quickly, we're just going to take this and we're going to quickly sand those edges, and you can see how it's going to knock that shine down really fast. And it's okay to overlap and come on the surface because I'm going to put hand scratches in the surface, but you're going to erase that when you go to your sander. So I'm just going to go through here, and I'm going to do those edges, and I'm going to be careful especially at those corners so that I don't burn through. Now when we do sand large pieces, we will neck our sander down to a slow speed, and we'll use our sander so we're not here all day sanding edges. But when I'm doing just a sample piece, it's going to be by hand so that I don't go through. All right, let's go on to the next grit. I'm just going to go progressively through these grits, and we'll get to our honed finish is what we like, and I'll show you the process as we go here. You can see how fast on a little sample, how fast this really goes. Now if I wanted this sample to be perfect, I would get rid of all these little shiny spots. I'm not super concerned on the edges of my sample, but if you want your samples perfect, just spend a lot of time on those edges getting those perfect. Our sanding discs, they last about 40 square feet, and then you're going to need to switch them out, but keep them wet and they'll last long. And what's nice about doing it dry, on the edges especially, is you can see when you hit the shine that you're looking for. And it's really cool that way. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to sand the surface of our sample. And when you go to do this, you don't have to start at our lowest grit if you don't want to. You can start at a higher grit, but if you have imperfections that you're trying to remove, like a little nib or a nub or something like that, start with a lower grit and work your way up. It doesn't take too long. It's a pretty fast process, but we're going to start with the lowest grit just to show the progression of what it can look like. Let's get started. All right, what we're going to do now, we're going to add a little bit of water to our surface just to lubricate our pad and keep this real simple for us. I like to use a spray bottle, but in this case, we'll just use a little bit of water. You don't need much, and we'll go ahead and get this going. I like to go on a pretty high speed when I'm doing the top. When I'm doing the edges with the sander, you're going to slow that down. All right, let's see what that looks like here. I'll get that water off and we'll blow that dry. Sorry about the noise, guys. So you can see, let me get a paper towel here. So you can see now how we've taken that piece that was shiny and we dull it down, and then that looks very similar to a natural concrete. It's really easy to do. Now I just bring it up to whatever level I want it to shine. This would be our lowest level, but when you feel this and when I rub my hand on it, it's very smooth. It doesn't feel like a rough sanded piece. I do see a couple of little marks here. We'll go ahead and do a couple more pads and we'll erase those marks and we'll progress through a few more pads. Let's see what it looks like. That's pretty easy, right? Doesn't it start to look real?
I didn't think you could get that much shine out of it.
Oh yeah, no, it's our second time doing it, so we got it down. No, I'm teasing. All right, ready? Okay, we'll start with that next pad. let's actually, we're gonna progress through a couple of pads. You don't have to clean it off between each grit. You can, but you really don't have to. It's good to clean it off every few grits though. And as you can see, it doesn't take a long time, but it is important to do those edges first so that you don't come and put hand scratches in the top. You want to have addressed the edges before you sand the surface. It's a little harder to do this when it's a small piece because it's wanting to vibrate around and things like that. So keep that in mind. When you're doing a big piece, it's actually easier because its own weight is supporting itself. It doesn't want to flop around. All right, I'm going to squeegee off this water and we'll take a look at it and just, this is up to 600 grit, and we'll take a look at it and see what it's starting to look like. Now, if you go too far and you want to take it back down, the process is reversible. You just step down to your other pad. Let's remove our residual dust here. This is really cool. This is starting to look like a honed stone. And it's really important, just as important as how it looks, it's important how it feels. Do you want to come feel this? You're going to be on camera. So this is a customer, they're learning actually how to do their own counters here, and they wanted to know how to make it look like concrete. What are your thoughts just feeling that for the first time?
I'm impressed with how smooth that feels.
Cool. Yeah. Do you think it looks like concrete?
Love it.
Cool. Now, would you want it shinier than that, or would you want, what are you thinking?
No, I like the more matte look.
Okay. All right. So you would just take it to 600 grit. So it would just be those few, it'd be 4 pads, and you see how fast it is, you know, it's, and what I'm doing is I'm going across grain, and then I'm going across grain, and then maybe, you know, one, but it's just up to how it looks. And I know when you first looked at this piece, you were a little concerned with the dots, I could tell, but it looks natural in there, you know, that's, so we don't mind those in there because concrete, it has what you call effervescence, which is like chalkiness that comes through naturally, and that kind of is what we're seeing here, or aggregate and things like that. So we don't mind when we're spraying it. Those little imperfections are so dulled down, it actually enhances the piece. You don't want it all looking like the same color, then you look like Corian, you know.
Yeah,
so
that looks great.
Awesome. That's what we're going to go with. So we'll stop there at 600. There's our concrete sample. And you can take any of your pieces. You can take, you know, if you want to make it look like travertine, we have videos that are going to show you how to do that. And you could hone any piece just like this.